Robert, it's great to have you back. A new season for you. Please, everybody, subscribe, like the video. We want to get this out to everybody. We're so excited about this new 2023 season. And I wanted to get with my brother Robert and get some insight. There's been a lot of things that happened in the offseason, and we want to discuss some of the most important things. So, getting to that point, I wanted to pose a question to you, Rob. Who do you think is the most important player to the success of the Miami
Mm,
Hurricanes on the offensive side of the ball for this 2023 season?
I wow. Wow. First of all, welcome all the viewers. And I know I've been getting a lot of requests of when we're going to come back, and here we are. And as you can see, my brother Frankie has jumped right out of the gate with something. Yeah, wow. Are we saying across all players, or are we saying newly acquired through portal,
No,
freshmen?
no, I think you bring up a good point. I think we really want to know across the new impact players, whether it be transfer portal, whether it be a freshman, a true freshman that's coming in on the team. We want to get a sense of who will be the most impactful and most important player to tie into the success of the Miami Hurricanes this season on the offensive side of the ball.
This might be surprising to many, or may not be to those of us who have, who have followed college football for some time, and have really listened to what's been said about the important positions and what they're trying to accomplish, as well as going back and taking a look at some of our successes and definitely our failures over the years. And when I take all that into consideration, and what you've proposed here, Frankie, as the first question out of the gate, I think, in my honest opinion, hands down, I think Matt Lee. I think the center that we have acquired, listening to him, kind of doing some of the homework of his background and the things that he has accomplished, and couple that with the weaknesses that we have experienced on the offensive line. I think what he brings to the table, his experience, definitely his mental capacity for the game, and what his responsibility will be in directing that offensive line, being able to recognize various defenses, being able to call out blitzes, stunts, so on and so forth, making sure that the left side is tied into the right side. He touches the ball every play.
Yes.
The center touches the ball every play. Yes, the quarterback does also. Yes, there possibly could be an argument for TVD, for the quarterback being the most important. But I believe that if he's not successful, TVD won't be successful.
Okay.
I just don't think there's no way around it. So I would put that on the table as Matt Lee on the offensive side of the ball is the most important player, in my opinion. Not the receivers, not the running back, close to the quarterback, but without him, I don't think that, or without a success of the center, I think that the success of the quarterback is very limited. So there you go.
Robert, I think if we give it plenty of thought, I don't think there is any other player. I have to agree with you 100%. The only caveat that I would add to that as a 1A, one being Matt Lee, and 1A would be Javion Cohen on the left side. But he's not the most important. I totally agree with you. Matt Lee is the most important player from an impactful standpoint going into the 2023 season, because we can talk about, and we'll briefly go over it. Yes, we need to get more out of our wide receivers. Absolutely, we need to get something out of our tight end. Yeah, we need to get something out of the running back. All those positions, but all those positions hinge on the quarterback having time to throw the ball, having time, and also on the offensive line having opening up holes for the running backs. So with that being said, let's jump into some information about Matt Lee and the center position. And I think the previous year, who do we have at center? Remember who we had at center prior to Matt Lee?
Thought it was Clark, wasn't it?
Right, I think it was Clark. So let's look into that real quick. Let's see here. Let's get to that. Okay. So can you see that, Rob?
Yep.
Okay.
I see it.
All right. Now, going to Matt Lee, this is something that's really interesting. You see where he's graded. He's graded as the top returning center in college football, which is impressive. So I just wanted to bring that out to the audience to take a look at how important it is that we got this individual. And then, it's not to say that July Clark was a bad center, but I'm going to give you a comparison. Let's go to July Clark real quick over here. If you look at July Clark, he was up for an award, one of many, but for the Remington Trophy watch list the year before, and he was a freshman when he started at offense, and then they at guard, and they actually moved him to center. So he was a good player, but the upgrade was so substantial that that it's just something that the Hurricanes had to do. And I want to get back to what you were saying, Rob, about calling the protections and being able to identify the defensive fronts. Can you elaborate a little bit more on why that's important, and also the fact that you've got a starting right tackle who's a freshman in Francis that is going to be starting at the right tackle and getting everybody lined up in the right position. On the left side of the ball, we're going to have a lot of experience with Rivers at tackle and Cohen at guard and Matt Lee. Now, let's talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to let this go with July Clark. But July Clark was a good center. He replaced the previous center, and name slips my mind, that went on to North Carolina. But that's and you got to ask yourself why. Why was it so important for them to get a top center? Why was that a priority of Mario Cristobal? What are your thoughts on that? And Alex Mirabal?
Yeah, so it is no big secret. When Mario first came on the scene last year, he made it absolutely clear the trenches will be the focus, right? So when you look at the offensive line, that's where it all starts. And then there's the defensive line. Then there's, the other players. But the offensive line is the most important. And it's not just my opinion. I think if you talk to any, enthusiast of football, it all starts on the offensive line. So when you say that is the most critical portion, you got to find the master or the critical person or individual on that group, within that group, and that's the center. So Mario knew he had to go out and find a center that was experienced, very good at what they did, and then of course being available. So Matt Lee fits the bill, right? And there is little to no doubt that the success of the Miami Hurricane is directly proportional to the success of the offensive line. The offensive line must be, without any doubt whatsoever, successful. You say, well, what does success look like? Success looks like, well, does TVD have time? Can we establish a running game? Sacks. Those things will determine the success of the team. Then there's the defensive line, and we're going to have a segment on that. But this is meeting the criteria that Mario set at the very beginning. The focus will be on the trenches. building inside out. And if you look at his approach, he has been very consistent inside out. He built the offensive line, receivers, running backs, even, brought in another quarterback. But the concern, and you and I talked about this before, who sits behind Matt?
Right.
Right.
Right. No, and I think that they're working towards that, that we still don't have the depth, but I want to highlight your comments because they're very appropriate and they emphasize something. If you look at the center position, a lot of people say that that's the quarterback of the offensive line.
Mhm.
Yeah, he is, but he's also, I look at it as a conductor in an orchestra. Okay, you've got 5 pieces on that offensive line, actually 6 if you're going to count the tight end. All right, so you've got these pieces on the offensive line. On the right side of the line, we have basically a sophomore and Inez Cooper who's going to be starting. Now, granted, he's a gifted, wonderful guard. He's lost some weight. He's powerful. He's big. So how do you beat a guy like that if you're on the defensive side of the ball? Typically, how you beat them is you beat them mentally. The mental game becomes paramount in this struggle. So you use technique, leverage, stunts, twists to beat the offensive line. So every one of those players has to have the ability to identify by the angles how they're lining up against them, what gaps they're going to shoot, what they're going to do if they're going to stunt, if they're going to twist, what they're going to do. So if you've got a sophomore, basically he was a freshman last year, started as a freshman, now he's a sophomore. And then on the right end, right to the right of him at right tackle is Francis Okonoa on Malin. I'm going to misspell it. I'm going to just call him Francis. Okay.
Yeah, just call him Francis.
Tackle. Yeah, he's a man child. Okay, he's young, he's physically imposing, but he was in a program at IMG that had a tremendous amount of skilled players, the top, the creme de la creme. So he's college ready, stepping on the field. But again, he's still a freshman, and we're talking about the mental aspect of the game. So who is going to direct these guys like a conductor and make sure he doesn't have that much of a challenge on the left side of the ball because he's got Javion Cohen, who's got like 30 games under his belt with Alabama. He's got Jalen Rivers, who's got probably the same number of games at Miami, who's now playing tackle, could go inside as well. So if you're going to start young guys on the right side of the ball, your center becomes the most critical piece on that offensive line. And then to your point, who's going to back them up? Well, who's going to coach the backup in addition to the offensive line coach to teach them how to read plays? If you notice, one of the things about him, and I don't want to pigeonhole because people have different styles, but if you notice, one thing about Matt Lee, he's extremely vocal. He gets in at the center position. He's raising his arm. He's pointing to the different defensive linemen, making sure that the offensive line acknowledges that that they understand the scheme that they're playing against, and they're going to be pulling and they're going to be doing all kinds of different things on that offensive line. And they've got to be able to recognize the defense. So I think I could not agree with you more, Robert. That was an outstanding assessment. He is the most important piece. And to emphasize that even further, there is a story that Matt Lee told about his recruiting to Miami when he was with Coach Alex Mirabal, and he was talking to him, and they were going through game clips and different game scenarios. How does he read the defenses? What does he see? What does he see the defensive line doing? How would he adjust the offensive line in that particular situation? And apparently at the back of the room was Coach Cristobal, and he's watching this. And apparently he jumped out of his chair and ran right over to Matt Lee and said, "We have to have you. We've got to have you on our team." That was the emphasis, because he recognizes what you need to have as far as a center for championship football. Now, we've only got him for 1 year, which is sad, but I like the fact that he's there and he can help the young guys grow into the position, and he's going to be an NFL player. To that point, let's take a look. I'm going to segue real quick to where his grade is for the NFL. Okay. If we look at him, there's the grades, the overall rating. He's got an 86 on pass blocking. Can you see that, Rob?
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
and a 71 for run blocking. And then they're going to talk about his scouting report, and this is important: the strengths and weaknesses. He's got the strength to hold up against a bull rush, which is important. And one of the things that you pointed out with Jalai Clark is that was one of his weaknesses.
This is weaknesses. This was what, and I'll just jump in real quick.
Sure.
When you look at Clark, this didn't happen. Well, it happened several times. He had trouble handling the bull rush.
Yes.
And teams will scout that, know it, and man, he will be pushed to 2 yards into the backfield. In many cases, they didn't have time to hand the ball off.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of his sincere weaknesses, unfortunately.
No, I totally agree. And then the other thing that it talks about with his strengths here, with Lee's strength, is he's fundamentally sound. And again, talking about blocking angles, that's a huge thing. You've got to understand the twists and the stunts that are coming in the defensive front so that you can align yourself and get the proper angle to make the blocks. And I think that's a really strong component of his game. He's got a disciplined awareness, and he's got great intelligence, quick-footed, smooth movement. He's got the ability to cover a large area. The guy's rangy, got good lateral ability. He's got a burst off the snap. He sets up quickly. He's also got a nasty streak, which they don't put in here, but he does. The other thing is the guy consistently keeps his feet. He can slide while maintaining power when dealing with speed rushers, and that's a big deal. Like you were just talking about, Jalai Clark was young also, but he'd get bull rushed. He's able to send speeding rushers, use their leverage against them, and run them past the pocket, which is a big deal. He's, according to this, he's not a mauler, but he is a tough guy, and he is very physical. He's got some unique traits in the run game, and he could be. And the other thing is he's got versatility, play guard or center. But here with us, he's needed at center. And the other thing I like about him is he's long enough to give you some versatility. He could play even right tackle if needed. So these are some of his strengths. Now we'll look at some of his weaknesses. Sometimes he sets up too tall, which could be a problem against speed rushers. He's a bit underpowered in the run game. They're working on that with the offseason training program, so he's going to be a lot stronger coming into this season. Sometimes off the ball, he can be a little high. They're working on the leverage part. And sometimes he falls off blocks and is more of a wall than a blocker. So he's not the mauler, but he's got a nasty streak in him, even at the second level. He'll give effort, but doesn't generate a lot of power at the point of attack. So he's got to build up some upper body, but the guy's got the knowledge of the game. He's got the strength, and he is ranked the #1 returning center, which we saw in college football, which is huge. So, it's an exciting thing to see. I'm going to go ahead and take us over here to a little clip of his right here. I just want to play it a little bit. Let's see if we got it at this point, to hear a little bit from Matt Lee. Hang on just a minute.
It's about, is it up here? Is it now? Like, I just go play ball. I just go play my game, and football. Tyler Van Dyke so far. I know he came down for your official visit and all that stuff. Tyler's been great. TVD's been great. Ever since the jump, when I did come visit, I know he flew down from Connecticut just for those nights, and treated me great. Welcomed me in immediately. Kind of sold the school, closed the deal, if you will, but he's been great out on the football field, in the locker room, as a leader, as a man, everything you want in your quarterback. And
how much time does it take to get adjusted, the chemistry between the snapping, to the quarterback and stuff?
I think with me and TVD, it's been pretty seamless. It's been pretty quick. The transition, even before spring started, when we were out running, just whatever on our own, throwing to the receivers, and I'm snapping to them with the cadence that we use with Coach Dawson. It really hasn't been a bump in the road. It's been like that. It's been good.
You have 2 5-star recruits, right? 2 freshmen. You got Javion, if I'm saying it right, at home.
Yep, Javion.
You got a really It seems like a great offensive line. Talk about the offensive line as a whole and the potential of this one.
Yeah, I think we got a bunch of talent in the room. Like you said, the two 5 stars coming in, CC Francis and Sampson, super talented guys, big, strong. You know, they don't look like they're 17 or just newly 18 years old, should still be in high school or early enrollees. And then a guy like Javion coming in, you know, his experience up in Alabama is great. He's a heck of a player. Jalen Rivers, great player, smart, you know, super talented. Same thing with Coop, Ness Cooper. He's a young guy. He just finished his freshman year, and he, big dude, plays hard, knows what he's doing. You know, he's a super talented guy too. And yeah, but overall, we got a bunch of talent in the room. You know, I think the sky's the limit. We just got to keep working on communication, learning the offense, and make everything click. Just get that chemistry down.
Did that get you excited just to see how much of a priority it was for them to load up on the offensive line this summer?
For sure, yeah, for sure. You know, I didn't really pay attention. I know people said this or that about last year's offensive line here. I wasn't really paying attention to that, given I was playing a football season last year. But the attention they did with, you know, coming after me, getting me, and then before that, getting Javion, you know, showed that they really prioritized it and really wanted it to take the next step.
It's gonna be the last question.
You want to be a leader for this offense, and as a transfer, how do you go about kind of establishing?
100%. I think as a veteran, a guy that has played a lot of football, and as the center, I think you have to be a leader. I think with what I can bring from the intellect side onto the football field and just the veteranship that I do have, I think absolutely I want to be a leader. I think I'm being a leader right now as we speak.
Matt, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Let me just jump in real quick.
Absolutely.
It's not just what he says, it's how he says it. We have listened to centers, we've listened to other people or linemen, and I'm having trouble aligning with the last time I heard an offensive lineman. Yeah, I had to go back to 2002, 2001, Brent, you know.
Romberg.
Ron Umbert, of hearing someone speak with confidence, conviction, believability, all those adjectives that will demonstrate his ability to lead in that position, right? Because when you listen to him, he's not stumbling, he's not fumbling with the words, he's not looking down. It's not this sense of, yeah, I'm a leader. Yeah, you know, boom. No, he speaks, boom. He's speaking at you. He speaks with authority. He speaks with confidence. Are you
Totally
understand what
agree.
I'm saying?
Totally
Right.
agree, Robert. Totally agree.
It's not just what he's saying, it's
how
how
he's saying
he's putting the punch into it. Right?
Absolutely. Do you know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of a couple things. He reminds me of basically a coach on the field.
He must be.
That you know, you could, I mean, basically a guy who's telling his guys how to line up, what to look for, and he's making an assessment of each individual player on the team, their strengths, their weaknesses. How can he adjust? How can he help them? Making the calls, the cadence of the count, which was another big deal. I think you're going to see them draw a couple teams off sides because you have a cagey, savvy center who can mess with their heads and draw a lot of defensive lines offside with the snap count. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're going to see some really explosive plays because when they get it right, they're going to get it right big. It's not going to be like they're going to build, you know, you're going to see some smaller holes, but when they make a big play, it's going to be a big play because he's going to see the right play and the right lineup for that offensive line. So he's making calls on the offensive line for every snap. And like you said, Rob, from the beginning, he is the most important player because only him and the quarterback are the only two players that see the ball every single play. They see the ball every single play. So to your point, I think it's gonna make a huge impact on these young guys. And also, when you're in a battle and you're fighting to a stalemate, you've got to have a leader that can push you through that wall to winning football. They're going to
Yep.
go up against teams, Texas A&M, which is coming up as an example, where they've got a massive defensive front that's smart, experienced, full of 5-stars, and they're gonna run stunts, they're gonna shoot the gaps, they're gonna run blitzes, blitz recognition. He's got to be, when they're going to go into different zone reads, and how are they going to defend all this and attack it where they can? And none of those guys on that offensive line have the experience, with maybe the exception of Javian Cohen and
Right.
Rivers, but that Matt Lee has, to be able to call out those concepts and tell them, hey, this is what we're going to be facing. So I think it is absolutely critical. I totally echo your sentiments on that. And the other thing it's going to do, what does it do for, and I'm going to ask you the question, what does having a guy like that on the offensive line do to the psyche? And a quarterback psyche is very fragile to a guy like Tyler Van Dyke.
Well, it just increases his confidence and his being able to capitalize on his strategy, his schemes, capitalize on his confidence. All of that just goes through the roof, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a partnership with your center and you have, a coach and assistant coach on the field, and you feel confident that this person that is there in front of you is able to deliver on what needs to be done. So I think that it does nothing but translates into a better quarterback play, right? Which then translates into a better offensive play as well. So I think is right in line, right? These things run hand in hand, your center and your quarterback, and what they're able to deliver through each other's ability to be confident in one another.
Yeah, I think it also, and you had been really sounding the alarm for several years about the size, power, speed, and depth of the line of scrimmage, the interior. Like you said at the beginning, building from the inside out. Okay. We've
Mhm.
now been able to look at the pre-construction of this unit. Now this unit is coming together, and you can't win without having success at the trenches. That's
Mhm.
just, it's just an impossibility. So I think that and we talked about it. You mentioned it to me. We're now maybe 1.5, maybe 2 players deep. Okay, not even 2, 1.5, I would say, on that offensive line, maybe 2. They
Mhm.
need another class to solidify that O-line, but they're definitely bringing in a different physical statured individual to play on that O-line. The
Mhm.
days of the 6'1", 6'2" offensive lineman that's 275, 280 are over. And then I also want to make a comment of something else is, I don't think we can count on, and you were telling me this too, I don't think we can count on Zion Nelson for anything. I think I feel bad because I think the guy has some talent, but he has not been able to recover from that injury. And I just
Mhm.
think that once that train is gone, it's over. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to get your thoughts on this upcoming season. We'll do a part 2 on the defense and see. But on the offensive side of the ball, before we do that, one last question that I want to pose to you. Which is the most important offensive coach? We now identified the most important offensive player for the success this year, that if he goes down, we're pretty much done. And I have to agree with you. I think it's Matt Lee. It's also TBD, but we're talking about the newcomers. If he goes down, we're pretty much in a big jam. Now, on the offensive coaching side, who do you think would be the most important offensive coach for this season?
Well, I think logically speaking, it would have to be a Marable, right?
I agree.
The offensive line coach. You got the most important player
Mhm.
playing on the most important unit. That most important unit will have to be coached by what I believe to be the most important coach.
Totally agree.
So I think that he is, and I have listened to him and kind of really taking into the things that he says and the successes that he has had over the years, he doesn't look like your typical offensive coach, right? He's about 5'7", 5'8", but man, he be getting in their grills and he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. So that should all come together. And then you have a head coach that fully understands the importance of that unit, the importance of having a offensive line or being in the trenches, a guy who has played the position. So the all of the ingredients are there. Now we got to put it in the oven and see what our recipe is going to actually produce throughout the season.
I totally
Right.
agree. I think, to your point, I think the empirical evidence that it's the offensive line coach is there based on last year's experience. When you did not have the right players and you did not have the talent on that offensive line, everything fell apart. So the coach is critical. The players are even more critical. You've got to get the talented individuals to be able to coach them up. So that's your product. Those players are the product. You got to get the right mix, the right blend of high quality goods that you can coach up. And I think all these players are hungry. I also think there's a cultural change, and the cultural change is this is not acceptable and this is acceptable. We only want the very best, striving to be the best, and team unity. And I think that's a big part of it. But I'm going to now transition to the schedule because I want to get to, let's see if we can share the screen here. Let's get to the schedule here. And I want to take this opportunity, Rob, to ask you, you and I have talked off camera about this, but I want to get your picks on this season, how you would measure a successful season for the Hurricanes. The best, give me your pick. The worst that we could do, the best that we could do, and where you think we would show progress going forward. What would be the middle of what we could do? So let's start out with Miami of Ohio. What are your thoughts? Win-loss? How do you think we're going to perform? How should we perform, Rob, to make a statement? What are the signs that you see in that game if the performance isn't up to spec, or if the performance is ahead of what we were projecting or better, or they played an exceptional game, if they've come together, or if they just squeak out a win? Give me your thoughts on Miami of Ohio next Friday at 7:00, September 1st at Hard Rock.
Yeah. So this game here, what I'll be looking for, being a student of the game, is the offensive execution. I will be looking at that offensive line. I'll be looking at Tyler Van Dyke. How will he look, right? The running game. I mean, all the elements of the offense, right? The defense, the linebacker play, cornerbacks, and, so on and so forth. I believe we should win this game. I think that trouble will show itself if we're not able to show that we control the game, right? That we're dictating the pace, the sense of urgency, problems. I mean, we're dictating the game, right? It is not this back and forth. It is not going into halftime, and it took us a field goal to be at 13-10. We're leading at halftime.
Okay. Well, let me
That
ask you, Rob, let me ask you
that
a
would be a
question.
concern.
Right. Let me ask you a question. What if, and again, I hope this is not the scenario, but what would be the indication to you if we come out of that game with a 7-point victory or a 3-point victory?
I would have to look at where were the challenges. Now, of course, the scoreboard is going to tell me there's a lot of challenges. Right now, if you're telling me that the game we won 17-10, it means that we couldn't score, we couldn't move the ball. It was a dogfight. You know, I mean, in today's college football, you gotta score north of 30 points.
Agreed. Totally.
I don't care what team you're playing.
Yep.
If you're not scoring north of 30 points, there's chances are you probably won't win the game, or you'll
Correct.
be in a dogfight. So I want to see them, you know, I'm not saying a blowout. I'm not saying that Miami.
Rob, let me ask you a question. I know you're not saying a blowout, but what are you talking about? A 7-point win, a 10-point win, a 21-point win? I mean,
I'm saying like a 21-point win.
agreed. Totally.
Okay, a 21-point win. And I will still say it's a 21-point win, even if they score a touchdown with a minute left. Right. The game is out of control. 21 points. We got our second, third stringers in there. They're going against the clock. They score.
Well, wait,
right.
back up a minute. Let me ask you a question about that, because you brought up a good scenario. If it's a 21-point game going into the fourth or third quarter,
yeah.
Would you like, with a new offensive line that's just starting to gel together, you got a lot of freshmen on both sides of the ball that are playing. Would you keep your substitution tight, or would you loosen the substitution? Because I consider this game a preseason game for the real game, which is Texas A&M. How would you handle it from a coaching perspective?
Let me make clear, I'm not a coach, but just a casual spectator. Well, I'm not casual about it at all.
No,
I have a lot vested. I would use this time to bring in players to get them some game time experience. I would make sure my number twos and some of my number threes are getting some activity.
Would you do that with the threes? Because I'm kind of leaning that I would do it with the ones and the twos, but I want because the ones and the twos are going to be substituting all the time in the next coming game. I think I'd hold back on the threes. I'd want to get as many reps in for the ones and the twos as possible. And I would save the threes for Bethune-Cookman. You and I talked about that. That's one of those where you empty out the bench and you start building that depth. But yeah, my concern would be, here's my concern. If they do a blowout like 21 points and they go too deep into the bench, I don't know that the players will have enough reps to carry over into Texas A&M. It might impact them. I may be wrong. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. It depends on how that 21-point lead is.
Correct.
If it was at one time 28-point lead, then they scored a touchdown, then we kind of got it back to 28 and 21, and then something happens in the last minute of the game and they end up scoring, a touchdown, and the score is like 14, but the game was never really out of control. I would agree with you, considering the next week you will want your twos to get as much reps as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I would keep it tight. I guess where I'm gun shy is, I know it's a game of injuries. Injuries can happen at any time. And I think the more people that you have some level of game experience, the better off you'll be.
I totally agree with that. Now, let me ask you about, so we chalk up a win against Miami of Ohio. What about Texas A&M? Win or loss?
My prediction has a loss here.
Okay. All right.
I think that
I got to mirror you, Rob. I agree with you. Now, what would you consider? And listen, we all, as fans, we all want to win every single game, and we're always, brokenhearted and disappointed and crushed by every loss. But there is such a thing in my book as a good loss. Okay. It's how you lose, to me, is as important as how you win. Now, what would you consider a good loss against Texas A&M if we lost?
I'm talking a fight to the end.
Totally agree.
I'm telling you, where it gets to the point where people are literally saying, we don't know who's going to win this game.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're talking about taking it into the fourth quarter, Rob, deep into the fourth quarter, and the game still
has not been decided. I mean, both sides are playing hard. You know, I mean, you're seeing the teams just going at it. Halftime, the score maybe 14-14, 17-14 or something like that. And it's just, you know, at that point, you still don't know. You come out the third quarter, first team gets it, scores. So it may be 24-14 or maybe 21-17. Now it's 21-24 because the next team score. I'm talking where no one is jumping out to like a 17-point lead, 14.
Right, where
I mean,
nobody's dominating. And
no one's dominating.
Right.
Last year, you know, we were at the game. That game just felt like we were in it until, we fumbled. We
Right.
fumbled that punt, and that's when the wheels started squeaking. But we just couldn't get it going, right?
Mhm. Okay. So
It shouldn't be, as long as I'm saying, man, we can't get it going, but the game is close. No,
Okay.
we're getting it going, and the game is close.
yeah, we're trading punches. In other
We're
words,
trading punches.
we're landing blows, they're landing blows, but we're landing
Right.
blows as well. So I agree with you. So that's a loss. What about now? Bethune-Cookman's easy. Let's just
Yeah.
chalk that up as a win. I think we both agree, and I
Yeah.
think we both agree that that should be a game where you're going to rest some of your twos and a little bit of your ones because of the big battle they had at Texas, and you're going to play a lot of threes, and that should be a runaway. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So let's go to Temple. What do you think about Temple? That should be a win also, in my
That
book.
should be, yeah, that should be a win. It's not a conversation as far as I'm concerned. And I know Temple people, anything can happen, but
Sure.
that should be a win. It's not a whole much to talk
Okay.
about there.
What about Georgia Tech, Rob?
I have that as a win.
Mhm.
Georgia Tech, you just don't know. That's the game before North Carolina. Well, actually, that's the game before the gauntlet, right?
Yes, you're
That's
right.
the
That's
game
before the
right before you got 5 games in a row that are done. But that should be a win. I think Georgia Tech at home for us should be a win.
Okay, I'm going to ask you for a hypothetical situation, and I don't want to go too crazy with it, but I am curious. Okay, your thoughts. What happens if we beat Texas A&M? We go into North Carolina, and I'm going to also add another caveat. We go to Georgia Tech, we win, we've rested the players. We go into North Carolina, into the gauntlet, healthy, with no major injuries or no injuries at all, and we go in 5-0. What do you think happens at North Carolina? What do you think happens?
In that scenario,
Yes.
that is going to be a very good game.
Mhm.
I think the team is going to be hyped. The team, we've lost to North Carolina. They're very. I mean, 4 out of 5 years or whatever the record is. I usually don't keep track of losing records, but it's something like that.
Yeah, you're right.
I have North Carolina as a loss. Last year was, I mean, it was just not, the year before that, or was it last year or the year before that, last minute? But anyway, I have it as a loss. By
the way, Rob, last year it was a close loss. As bad as we were, it was a loss, but it was a fairly close loss. That was interesting that you mentioned that, if I remember correctly.
Now,
last year, I think we challenged, but we fell short.
Was that the one where we threw an interception at the very last? It was a tip.
Yes,
Oh,
something like that.
So then we played North Carolina at North Carolina 2 years in a row. I guess with the realignment of the conferences we're at North Carolina. North Carolina.
You've got them down as a loss.
Yeah.
I've got them down as actually I've got them down as a win. And especially if we beat Texas A&M. Now, yeah, but I will say that's going to be a tough one. I've got a different surprise loss coming up, but because you're right, you're always going to lose one that you don't know about, that you don't think about. But if we leave North Carolina and we're gonna chalk it up in the column as a loss, let's go to Clemson. I think that's a no-brainer. That's a loss. The question is, how big a loss is it? Is it a 7-point loss? In other words, what would make you feel like the program's heading in the right direction now when you're up against the number 1 seed in your entire conference and your entire in the ACC? What
I would,
yeah.
I would put this in the same. I would categorize this the same as I did with Texas A&M.
Mhm.
It would have to be a fight. It cannot be where Clemson controls the
line of
game,
scrimmage. Yeah.
like last year. I mean,
Yeah, it was
they're
disgusting.
controlling the line of scrimmage, the
It was
game. It was embarrassing.
Yeah. Totally.
And I have this as a loss as well.
Okay. How about Virginia? I got it as a win.
I have it as a win as well.
Okay. Let's move on to North Carolina State. I actually have NC State as a loss.
My prediction, and I'm just, I have in my prediction a surprise loss,
I do too.
right? I have a surprise loss. In other words, a game that we should win.
Right.
I'm going to put that as a win for now. North Carolina State
Yeah,
as a
I've
win.
got NC State as a loss. Now, this one will surprise you. I've actually got, depending on the health and what have you, of both, well, you never know. I've got Miami as a win against Florida State. So that's the one that
Wow.
yeah. And I know
Yeah.
the logic says it should be a loss, but I've got them down as a win. I just think that, I just think that the offensive line is going to make a big difference in that game. And quite honestly, so is the defense with the new style of defense that we're playing.
I have this as a loss.
Okay.
I think Florida State is a solid team. I think they're a very good team. Their quarterback play is exceptional.
Yes, it is.
Same thing with North Carolina. If you have quarterbacks like that,
Just-
and you have an offensive line like they have, and their defense is pretty good. Now, North Carolina's defense is not as good as Florida State's, in my opinion.
Not anywhere near it. You're right.
Yeah,
Rob,
yeah.
You're 100% right. Florida State is a much bigger challenge than North Carolina. There's no doubt.
So I have Florida State as a loss.
Okay. What about Louisville?
I have that as a win. I think that we should beat them at home. I see. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout. I'm not saying, but at this point of our schedule, our offensive line should be well gelled,
Totally agree.
barring any significant injuries.
Totally
I
agree.
think our running game should be clicking, passing game. I think that the linebackers, as young as they might be, as far as those that are being rotation, will be more experienced. I think that as a team, we would have come a long way. And I have this as a win.
Me too. What about Boston College in November 24? You know that the weather's going to play a factor at a noon game. Well, you're going to laugh when I tell you, I got Boston College as a loss. And
I do too. I do too. This is the surprise loss that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Just a few moments ago. The surprise loss, actually, I had it either here or Louisville. One of those
two. I agree with you,
that
Rob.
we should win.
Right.
But I'm going to put the loss at the end of the season, and I think my record with the surprise loss is 7-5. Now, that is, in my opinion, I believe that should be the worst we should do. 6-6 ain't gonna hit it. We can't be 6-6.
No. And I've got them at like 8-4, but I agree with you. 8-4 is on the high side. 7-5 is the more realistic, and it can't be below 7. I think you and I both agree. If we tip below 7, it's a failed season. You've got to get you've got to be at least 7-5. And if it's 7-5, I think you and I would agree more than likely, and they're challenging in these games that are losses. We would agree that they're moving in the right direction. They're moving forward, and they're going to a bowl game, by the way, if they're 7-5.
Yeah,
so they've got to be 7-5. I totally agree with you. Well, Rob, I want to thank you, my brother. I really enjoyed spending this time and really excited about the new season. And we're just, I mean, it's Canes football. And like Coach Hayes says, we love Coach Hayes. The Canes juice is ready to go. So we're really excited about it, and we'll get back and we'll be bringing you guys a new video next week. We want to thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, like, and please share. Add some comments. We want to know your thoughts down at the bottom. Add some comments. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you think about our predictions. Tell us what you think if you believe Matt Lee is the top player on the offensive line of the new players coming in. Remember, we're talking about new acquisitions. The most impactful player is Coach Alex Maribal, the most important coach for this new season, coming in for the success of the Hurricanes. Let us know about what your thoughts are. We're going to tackle the defensive line next week. We're going to talk about the most impactful defensive transfer that's coming in or rookie freshman. There's a lot that we can talk about with Bain, which is could be making a huge impact. Let's discuss that. You guys have a wonderful week, Cane Nation. We look forward to seeing you. God bless everybody. Rob, God bless you.
Let's go Canes.
Let's go Canes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and add your comments. Love it. Love it. We will see you then.